So I'm sure you've heard the news that the GOP has decided to go ahead and move forward with Joe Biden's impeachment. There's a lot going on right now. We have the Hunter Biden indictment along with the Ukraine business dealings. That laptop is still floating around there somewhere. And then we also have this issue that it has now been stated that the Washington Post recently in an op-ed is saying that they don't think Joe Biden should run again at all. I don't disagree. And now we have the Biden impeachment. So there's a lot going on right now. I want to get started with this video here of Kevin McCarthy discussing their decision to move forward with this impeachment. And let's go ahead and dive right in.
That they bribed the Bidens, okay? This was given to the FBI. When Bill Barr finally found out about it, he sent it to his office in Philadelphia. They actually said that this was very credible. The FBI kept this from the IRS individuals for them ever to see it. So not only do they claim that they were bribed, we now find information that 16 out of 17 payments from Romania were provided to the Biden shell companies while he was vice president. When President Biden was running for office, he told the American public that he's never talked about business. He said his family has never received $1 from China, which we now prove is not true. We now have some of the most credible whistleblowers. These 10-year IRS agents who have come forward said that the Biden family has been treated differently, that what Weiss has told us is different than what Garland and Weiss has told the public. And you're sitting here today where now you have found millions of foreign money, just what the 1023 alleges they did to Biden's family. Now we found that it has funneled through shell companies. If you're sitting in our position today, we would know none of this if Republicans had not taken the majority. We've only followed where the information has taken us. But Hannity, this is right.
Okay, let's pause here for just a second and then I'll come back to the video. This does not look good for Joe Biden. Taking money from China, funneling that money through shell companies. So remember, we heard rumblings about this a couple of months ago and we're like, we'll see where it goes. We'll see if anything happens, right? But now here we are. And to that point that Kevin McCarthy just made, I want you to think about something. For example, let's pretend in November 2022, the Democrats did keep the House. We probably wouldn't even know about this. We probably would be completely blind to this story. So this is really interesting. I don't know what the Biden administration has to say in reference to these allegations, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you this. When it comes to finances, I'm pretty certain that they have enough evidence to say that Joe Biden did something wrong when it comes to taking money from foreign nationals. Now, the thing is the part that's really important, I want you to really understand, is that this just goes to show you once again that both Biden and Trump are corrupt, both of them. That's why there is no lesser of two evils. This is why I continue to say this. So you have Donald Trump has multiple indictments. Joe Biden is now up for impeachment. And to be clear, impeach doesn't mean removed from office. Impeachment means that there has been a motion to vote whether or not to remove the president from office. I just want to make that very clear. But the thing is that we just have corrupt politicians in this country. At the end of the day, just corrupt politicians. And again, to that point, if Democrats kept the House back in November, we probably would know nothing about this. Something to think about.
Rising to the level of impeachment inquiry, which provides Congress the strongest power to get the rest of the knowledge and information needed. Because this president has also used something we have not seen since Richard Nixon, used the weaponization of government to benefit his family and deny Congress the ability to have the oversight.
If we are talking about millions of dollars coming from our top geopolitical foes, and that the Biden family has been corrupted and took in all of this money, and he was complicit in that, wouldn't that Wouldn't that mean that we have a criminal enterprise as president of the United States that had to be on every level compromised by countries that are not particularly fond of us?
Well, it's interesting that the Biden family runs, if they say, a company but never had an office and shell companies to be able to pay through. But if they really ran it for foreign countries, why didn't you get money from France, from Germany, from UK? Why does it have to be from China, Romania, in these countries that have real challenges and had problems going through? I believe we will follow this all the way to the end, and this is going to rise to an impeachment inquiry the way the Constitution tells us to do this, and we have to get the answers to these questions.
I don't think Joe Biden is going to run in 2024. Like this, they're serious, and I usually would say that this is wild, but they are serious. And now it's not just Kevin McCarthy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with James Carville. I refer to him as Tales from the Crypt because that's kind of what he reminds me of. But James Carville also chimed in reference to Joe Biden's impeachment inquiry. I just think, like, honestly, let me see this real quick. Honestly, I'm going to keep it real with you. It is not looking good for the Democratic Party come 2024. Because if this impeachment goes through, they may already have enough votes for it to pass in the House. Then it would go to the Senate. This is what happened similar to Bill Clinton when he was impeached. Passed in the House, and I believe, if I remember correctly, it passed in the House and failed in the Senate. But this time around, like, there is a possibility that this could pass in both. So I don't think Joe Biden is going to run for president in 2024. We'll have to wait and see, of course. But I want to get into this video here from CNN, this interview with James Carville. It says, James Carville wants Biden impeachment inquiry. Hear why. So he actually wants this to happen. Let's get into this.
From one of the handful of columnists that President Biden reads closely, David Ignatius, writing in the Washington Post, President Biden should not run again in 2024. He points to his age and Vice President Kamala Harris's poll numbers as reasons, and I'm quoting him now, Biden risks undoing his greatest achievement, which was stopping Trump. This op-ed, of course, dropping as Republicans launched an impeachment inquiry into the president on Capitol Hill. James Carville ran Bill Clinton's 1992 winning campaign. He invented the modern day political war room to respond to attacks, and he joins me now. Thank you so much, James, for being here. I mean, what David...
Want to pause here for a second because I just want to say something in reference to Bill Clinton. So remember, she said that he ran, Bill Clinton's, administration. Let's remember that was when the Democratic Party changed. It was under Bill Clinton. It moved further and further to the right. So just keep that in mind.
Ignatius is writing, as he says, this isn't just a Fox News trope. I'm quoting him. He says it is the subject of dinner table conversations across America this summer. Does he have a point?
Of course he does. I mean, plenty of things I can come on your program and say that's just Fox News made up stuff. We need to pivot and segue to the real issues and talk about infrastructure, education, or something else. And it's not just what David Ignatius thinks or James Carville thinks or some pundit thinks. It's the American public has real doubts about this. And you can see it in poll after poll after poll. Now, the White House gets frustrated with the media for bringing it up, but they're not going to stop. This is going to continue to be an issue, and they're going to have to figure a way to address it and address it forthrightly. But the idea of saying this is not a real issue and you got to talk about something else, that doesn't work because the public, it's a water cooler issue with the public. It just is. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And
So here's something I want us to think about for a second. I just want to remind, I know I can't turn up the volume is maxed up. And unfortunately, I don't have type VNC over here, so I can't increase the volume. The volume booster doesn't work unless I have it in type VNC, but I have the captions underneath. But this is the thing to think about. The Democratic Party is in a lot of trouble because, number one, we didn't want Joe Biden to begin with anyway. The overwhelming support for Joe Biden in the 2020 election was not because people loved Joe Biden and wanted Joe Biden. So problem number one, Joe Biden doesn't really have a solid base, right? Bernie Sanders had a solid base. Donald Trump has a solid base. but Joe Biden does not. So essentially, what you received were people voting against Donald Trump. Now we're going into re-election for 2024. The economy's in the pits. The child poverty rate has increased, regardless of what politicians like Ro Khanna are telling you. The homelessness rate has increased. All this is under Joe Biden's administration, and they're ending the moratorium on student debt. So you have all of those things. And on top of that, now you have this impeachment. The worst mistake the DNC made, and you add Barack Obama to that too, by the way, was pushing a candidate on the American people that the people really did not want. And they used the fear of you're going to get Donald Trump again if you don't to work for them. Well, it worked then. But now we've had Donald Trump and we've had Joe Biden. And people see the economy is worse under Joe Biden than it is under Donald Trump. So the Democratic Party is screwed. And I'm going to keep it real. They're either going to have to find a substitute for Joe Biden. And even then, there's going to be criticism. Because who's that substitute going to be? Is it going to be a Kamala Harris? People don't trust her. People don't think she can run the country. She's terrible in foreign policy. We have the war in Ukraine right now. Do you really want her in charge of the country with this issue happening right now? So there's that. The other option is to bring in Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom can't fix California. People in California are still struggling. Again, economic struggles. California has the highest homelessness rate in this country. These are economic issues. So why bring in Gavin Newsom, who's the governor of a state that's having economic issues during a time when the entire country, the economy is in the pits? So this is what happens when you push a candidate that the American people do not want. So they're screwed. This is all on them.
He says that basically they got to decide this soon, or the stone will be cast, the decision will be made. Democrats, there won't be time to find an alternative. Do you agree that it's a quick timeline here?
No, I don't. I know it's a different era. President Clinton didn't announce until early October of 1991. Lyndon Johnson was running for president in March of 1968. And so I'm got on my podcast, I got Elaine Kmark, who's an expert who writes books about delegate selection and timelines and things like that. And I think that's some beltway mislogic that if you don't do it within the next 10 days or 14 days, the process inevitably breaks down. I don't agree with that. But by the way, to be honest, there's no sign that President Biden is not fully intending to run for re-election. I have to say that. I have no inclination that they're reconsidering this or anything like that. And I don't think anybody else does, to be honest with you. But the idea that the drop dead date is September the 26th, I think it's probably gone.
Yeah.
So certain states have different primary deadlines, right? So coming into October, there's a couple of states where the deadline is October if you're going to run for president. And then there's even more when you get into the month of November. That's why he's talking about that deadline of September 26th. But what he's letting you know is that the DNC is going to do what they want to do regardless. This is why they're already changing the rules. And we'll get into that in just a second with the RFK Jr. story. This is why they're already changing the rules in reference to Iowa, New Hampshire, and Georgia for candidates like Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. Because they know, listen, you don't change the rules you need to have 80% in those states. Otherwise, your delegates go to Joe Biden. That's what they're doing to Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. right now. Right now. So they're already trying to fix it for Joe Biden. But that doesn't mean that Joe Biden will win in the general. And that's going to be a big problem. Let's continue.
That's a good point, because there is no indication that President Biden, I mean, he likes David Ignatius. There's no sign he's listening to him. When it comes to the impeachment inquiry overall, what do you make of how the White House has been handling it so far? Do you think they're being aggressive enough, or should there be a war room? Should there be a more out front effort from them?
Well, my honest opinion is the people they have leading it are not very smart. In fact, they're borderline stupid. I mean, James Comer or Jim Jordan. And the people in the House that are going to be on this committee, like Dan Goldman, Delegate Plaskett, I think is from Virgin Islands, Jamie Raskin. These are very smart people. I don't think the White House needs to worry too much about this and let these congressional Democrats who are whip smart are just going to eat these people alive. I so want them to do this. I can't tell you how much I want them to do this. This is a very.
You want them to do the impeachment? What do you mean?
So he wants the impeachment inquiry. He wants it to happen because he says that the people, the Republicans that are a part of that committee, he said are not very smart. So that's why he wants it. He wants this to happen. Oh boy.
I want them to hold hearings.
Why do you think it's a stupid
I want them
idea?
to hold hearings, and I want to let people, the American public, see how thin, how non-existent a case is. The president did anything wrong. And I want our people who are quite effective lawyers to get them on cross-examination and do what they're going to do and make fools out of them.
I seriously doubt they would go this far if they don't have financial receipts. Like, this is a finance issue. So I seriously doubt that. If they have evidence to prove that money came from China and was, inserted into shell companies under the Biden family, if they have receipts that actually show that, Joe Biden is screwed. And you know what else? People will look at the Democratic Party with a side eye. Just like when Clinton was impeached. I remember when Bill Clinton was impeached. Again, he wasn't removed from office. But I remember people were looking at the Democratic Party with a side eye after that. And then we got George W. Bush. Something else to think about. But this guy always comes back. James Carville, he always comes back. Just when you think he's done making appearances, every time during election season, he pops back up.
There's some polling from CNN and from others as well about, even though, as we just talked about the congressman, there's no direct evidence tying President Biden to benefiting from this. 61% of people do think that he was involved. There's other numbers of people who have questions about it. Do you not think that those hearings could raise those numbers, could change that? What's your sense?
I think it would change it. I think it would drive it down because the public would pay attention to the hearings and they would see front and center how vapid and useless this entire endeavor is when it comes to the president doing anything wrong. I mean, how much more can you embarrass Hunter Biden? But there is zero evidence that the.
Let me pause for a second. When he says, how much further can you embarrass Hunter Biden? Hunter Biden embarrassed himself. Hunter Biden embarrassed himself with that laptop, with the videos that he had on that laptop, with the financial documents that he decided to put on that laptop. He has embarrassed himself. Not the Democratic Party, not the Republican Party, not the American people. This is something that he did. And it is really ridiculous to sit here and listen to James Carville try to make it seem like this is someone else's fault. No, it's Hunter Biden's fault. But he just feels like Hunter Biden should not be embarrassed. Why? Because he's Joe Biden's son. This is the clown show. This is the clown show. Let's go back a little bit because I stopped it right when he was starting.
How vapid and useless this entire endeavor is when it comes to the president doing anything wrong. I mean, how much more can you embarrass Hunter Biden? But there is zero evidence that the president had not made a single penny out of this. And they're going to drive that point home, Caitlin. They're going to drive it home hard. And our people in the House, I have a great deal of, not so much affection for them, but respect for their legal expertise. I would not want Dan Goldman to cross-examine me. I really wouldn't.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're saying you think impeachment could be a good thing. Is that right?
That is correct. You're not putting words in my mouth. You're saying, during the Civil War, when the Sherman marched in Atlanta, they told him that John Bell Hood was taking the Confederate Army north. He said, good, I'll send them rations. Let them go. Great. And that ended up at the Battle of Franklin, which was an utter disaster. And that's just what they're walking into. Yeah, I actually think I was happy when McCarthy got out there and said that. I thought, wow, how could we get so lucky?
So I just want to remind everyone, when the Democratic Party decided to try to impeach Donald Trump lost re-election. Just a reminder. Now, we can think back to whether or not, the pandemic had stuff to do with that as well. I totally get that, but it does say something about your character. So he thinks that this may help Joe Biden. I don't think it's going to help Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden needs to go. Like, I really do think his time has come and gone. He's having difficulty talking. He's having difficulty speaking at these political engagements. It's very obvious that Joe Biden is not fit to lead this country anymore. So with or without an impeachment, the American people can see that.